So we're working towards something like this for the midterm. Um, Multi-story, wood frame, lots of layers. This one doesn't have any kind of overhang. We'll talk about that a little more as we go. Uh, if you don't do an overhang, you really have to think really hard about keeping moisture out of the building and design it and install it properly. So I'll probably leave it up to you guys which one you want to model. But let's go back into Revit for a second. So after I finished, this is what I ended up with that wall. I had to freeform this one because I ran out of model lines and it wasn't letting me do the offset because this curve became problematic. And then I just copied it and made its own layer because this is eventually also going to end up in your midterm. So what I want for our next one is I want to start by copying one roof and the wall into that file so that I don't have to redo all that work. So I'm going to go ahead and go to File, and there's a wood blank Revit 2026 that's on Canvas. So I'm going to open that, and you can see it starts in the south elevation. I'm just going to come up to my roof plan for now. I'm going to highlight my non-ventilated. So I'm going to say filter, and I'm going to get rid of parts and lines. And I don't really care about the structural framing either because we already have that in the template. So now that I have just the roof, I'm going to hit Control C. And now I'm going to come back into this other file, and you'll see up here which one's active. And I'm going to click anywhere and click Control V. You get this weird message about all of your graphics. Just click OK and drop it wherever. Now you can see I have this roof, as well as if I come into roofs now, you can see I have the unventilated and the sink. I'm just going to click cancel here. I'm not actually making a roof. And now that I know they're loaded, I'm going to delete it because I don't want it just floating around in my project. I'm going to do the same thing with the wall because I don't want to have to remake my wall. I'm going to come in here. And you can see it says now we're working with the roof template. Let me come up here. I'm going to grab all this and I'm going to check none, and the only thing I want is my one wall. Because again, I have all this other stuff in the template. I'm going to say Control C. Come back in here. Click anywhere, say Control V. And yep. All right. Now, in theory, I should have that as one of my wall options. Yep, Benson wood wall. Great. So I'm just going to delete that as well. I'm not going to worry about these warnings. So rather than confuse myself, I am going to close out that roof template so that the only thing I now have open is what we're going to be working with through the end of the semester. We're not going to worry about the isolated footings and all that, but we do have a nice section here, basement wall to work with. So the first thing we want to do is establish the connection between the foundation and our first floor. So I'm going to come into, let me see my elevation again. And if these are all right on top of each other, just a reminder, you can come in and say ½ inch equals a foot, and it'll change that. So I'm going to open up my retaining wall top. Right now I can't see anything because of my view range. So I'm going to switch that to level below. And now I can actually see my wall. The first thing that sits on top of the foundation is a sill seal. It's a membrane that's really not going to give you any thickness in Revit. So we're not going to model that in 3D. We can add it in a section later as a membrane line. If you really want to, you can create something that's made out of butyl or some other soft, malleable thing. So the purpose is, one, to keep the wood from connection with concrete, which will destroy your wood over time, but also any of the tiny gaps that would let air flow through, it seals that up. So I'm going to come to structure, I'm going to go to beam, and since we are doing 2x8s, my sill seal is also going to be a 2x8. We want it on the very edge here, but it's hard to know where it's going to land, so I'm going to just start by drawing it here. And again, it's set to top justification, which means it's going to be in our retaining wall, so I'm going to switch to bottom. Now, before I reposition it while I'm in this view, I'm going to go ahead and snap it to the edges. And now I can come into my south. Ah, great, and it didn't actually update, so let me switch this to bottom. Okay, so now it's here. I want it to be on the outer edge. I'm just going to use my align tool. And now I have a bottom plate. We are going to have a web joist going this way that are a funky dimension. So we're going to have to kind of create a custom rim joist that'll cover that and be the same height. So if we come into our beam, again, go to structure, beam. Okay, let me go to a plan that'll work. There we go. So you can see our web joists are 14 inches high. If I come to 2x14 and I check my dimensions, that's not quite right. We're 3/4 of an inch shy. So I'm going to duplicate this. I'm just going to call it custom or rim joist. Either way. And we want to make that a true 1 foot 2 inches because that's what everything else that we're going to put in there will be that's running across. Alright, and now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to switch. Alright, great. The justification's bottom now. I'm just going to pick this line. I'm going to have to move it in the south elevation again. Before I do that, I will drag the shape handles and snap. Now I'm going to use the align tool again. Now we've got our thing, but it's still based on our level. So we need that plus this 1.5 inches. So I'm going to highlight it. And now on top of having the bottom justification, I'm going to give a Z offset of 1.5 inches. Now it's sitting on top. Alright, I have a sill plate, I have a rim joist, now we need all the joists that would normally go across the building. So I'm going to come back into my retaining wall top. Come back to beam, structure, beam. Now I could do this before we put our floor in, and I'll show you that, and then I'll undo it and I'll show you how to host it to a floor as a beam system. So I'm going to start with this. Again, we're on bottom. I'm going to give it an offset value of 1.5 because it's actually going to sit on top of our sill. I'm going to come, well, it's not letting me snap to that. So I'll start here. I'll come all the way across. And now I can adjust it to actually snap. And now I can decide if I'm going to move it and how far. So I'll start it there. And now if I was going to do a whole row of these, I could do some math and make an array, or I could just copy them 2 feet at a time. But I'm going to show another method. I'm going to leave this one here for now. But like I said, if I wanted to, I could just say copy 2 feet, 2 feet. Or if I took a dimension here, that's 20 feet. So I would want a total of 20 going from here to A, and I could say, where's my array? No, assembly. Here's my array. I could say I want 20 of them, and I'm going to move it to second. I'm going to then just pick on it and go 2 feet. And now you can see I've populated that. So those are 2 of 3 ways I'm going to show you on how to do that. But first, I'm going to come into floor. So I'm going to show you, we're going to have a 3/4 inch floor here. Let's see what our current gap is, or subfloor I should say. So we got 2 1/8 inch. I'm going to move that. So to do that, I'm going to first click the level. Then I'm going to click here and say 0.75 inches. And so now I've got a good level. I can make my subfloor. What's it called? First floor. I'm going to open that up. I'm going to come to Architecture tab. I'm going to go to Floor. And now this one is 5/8, but I'm going to edit that. I'm going to duplicate this one and just call it 3/4 inch. And you could get away with 5/8, but durability wise, 3/4 inch is going to be a lot better for you. If my mouse would cooperate, I'd change that. All right, now I'm just going to make a rectangle. let's take a look at our south elevation and hopefully what we see. Yeah, we have a nice subfloor here that goes all the way up. So I'm going to come to 3D just to show this a little bit. One of the nice things about beam systems, I know we played around with them a little bit already, but they can be hosted in just about anything. They could be hosted in a floor, a wall, a pitched roof. So rather than just copy them a bunch of times or do an array, I can come to Structure tab. I can go to Beam System. I can say I want this every 2 feet. Again, you want to make sure you're non-planar because you don't want things going sideways on you. I'm going to make it my web joist that's by 14. I'm going to pick my plane. And now I want to try and come in and actually get the underside of, there we go. So if I'm on the bottom of my 3/4 inch plywood, now I can draw my boundary line. I can change my beam direction to match the existing one. And this one's not going to be a problem because when you do beam systems, one of the things that's not great about it is it starts with nothing and then goes 2 feet in from that. So I'm going to click OK. And now if I scroll around, you can see I've got everything here. What the heck is this? Structural framing. I don't need that. All right, we have our subfloor, we have our rim joist. We have these running. This one probably wouldn't be necessary because we'd have another rim joist over here. I'm going to leave it for now though because we're really only modeling the one side of the building. What else do we need? We need some insulation underneath here. So I'm going to come to my east elevation. I'm going to make sure I go to Fine Detail. And I want to check the spacing between these first two to make sure nothing went sideways. Yeah, okay, we're good. So I'm going to model insulation as a component model in place. I'm just going to do a regular rectangle. Some people last semester wanted to cut in and get right up on this. Especially if you're using rigid insulation, I don't know that anybody on a job site is going to sit there and carve out this. Maybe if you were using rock wool or something like that, you could have it be the wider and you just kind of cram it in. But I'm going to keep it simple. Go with a model in place. I'm going to call this floor because it's part of a floor. Going to make it extrusion. I say pick a plane. I'm just going to pick the edge of my joist here. And I'm going to make it just 2 feet. So one of the things in housing and energy efficiency is it's just that rim joist in the basement for the first few feet where you really need it. Otherwise, heat can transfer a little bit into your basement. If you look at, I've took some thermal pictures of my house where I don't have any insulation in the basement there, and it is just leaking out like it's a window almost. So, all right, I'm going to come to my first floor view. I'm going to go to wireframe so I can see where that is. I'm not seeing it. I'll just click finish for now. There it is. All right, so now I'm just going to move this. I'm going to unconstrain it. All right, I'm going to click move, unconstrain. That is bizarre. Okay. Ah, I know what I need to do. Edit in place. It wants to stay on the edge of the joist. I have to disassociate it. Finish. And now, when I click move, it won't even be constrained. Just going to come straight over. And I'm going to come right up to the edge of my rim joist. And now I'm just going to copy it. And so you'll copy it all the way up. I'm only going to show a couple. Just make sure you stay vertical. If you start going sideways, it'll get funky. All right, so now we have a floor. I'm going to stop the video here. We will deal with our first floor wall on the next video. We're going to work on that for a while and get everything the way we want it before we copy it up to the second floor.